That man had a born talent for being an assassin. Not a day went by without him taking a life, and he always felt like something was missing. However, an unexpected incident made his conscience waver a little, and with firm resolve, he prepared to hang up his sword, wash his hands, settle down, and change his way of life. Little did he know that this very decision would bring about his own demise. Faced with simultaneous pursuit from both the dark and light factions, his bloodstained hands could now only become the hunted. Flashback to a month earlier, Assassin Bang was a notorious high-level figure in the underworld, whose name alone struck fear into people's hearts. He never cared if a target deserved to die or not. As long as the money was fair, he didn't need to think twice. He was also the sharpest knife of the crime boss, Peter. That day, Peter's sworn enemy, Cuba, had just been released from prison, so Peter hastily dispatched Bang to assassinate him. And the opponent was truly reckless, thinking that bringing many bodyguards meant he had nothing to worry about, even directly finding a hotel to start an all-night party. Who knew that at this very moment, Bang had quietly infiltrated the hotel? The bald bodyguard immediately noticed something unusual and instantly became alert at the door. But in the end, it was still one step too late. By this time, Cuba in the room had long been made delirious by stimulants. Seeing Bang closing in step by step, he couldn't maintain his composure, hastily stammering pleas for his life, even offering 3 times the price to buy his own life. But Bang remained unmoved, striking coldly, without a trace of pity, directly shooting him in the head, completing the mission perfectly. Peter praised Bang effusively, his words filled with undisguised admiration. However, this attitude caused jealousy and dissatisfaction in his biological son, Johnny. Johnny reluctantly paid the reward, but secretly vowed to find Bang's weakness to eliminate him from the organization. Bang naturally knew the petty thoughts of his opponent, but he didn't care, because solid strength was the confidence that allowed him to speak up. Therefore, after receiving a hefty reward, Bang immediately sought out his ex-girlfriend, April, who was working as a stripper streamer, preparing to unwind, and she, understanding his intentions, immediately finished her work and left with Bang. The two experienced a night of debauchery and excitement. Although assassins shouldn't have emotions, Bang had begun to tire of the killing life, even contemplating retiring. However, his every action, no matter how small, did not escape Peter's watchful eye. Therefore, to kill a chicken to scare the monkey, Peter personally assassinated a subordinate who was about to get married right in front of Bang, intending to warn him not to even think about betraying the organization. Bang naturally understood the old boss's intentions, so he obediently followed the other party's instructions, neatly disposing of the subordinate's body. Afterward, he went into a bar, trying to drown his sorrows in alcohol, but unexpectedly, fate played a cruel, terrifying trick on him. Bang was critically injured and rushed to the emergency room, but his condition was not good. It seemed he would die there. Unexpectedly, Peter himself came to the hospital. He met with the hospital director, pressuring and threatening him to save the man at all costs. Reluctantly, the director had no choice but to personally take over the surgery. Perhaps Bang's time wasn't up yet. When he was admitted to the hospital, coincidentally, a man had died from a traffic accident, and his heart was perfectly compatible with Bang's. So Peter used all his connections to intervene and coercively transplant that man's heart into Bang. After hearing the director's explanation, Bang's heart was suddenly filled with a mix of emotions. Especially when he learned that the other man's wife had just given birth, his heart felt even heavier with guilt. Therefore, after his body recovered a little, he immediately secretly visited the newborn baby and even secretly sent flowers to the baby's mother, Mary. However, before Bang could fully recover, Peter led his men to pick him up from the hospital and urged him to quickly get back to work. The organization still needed him to continue cleaning up, but ever since his heart transplant, Bang had become a completely different person. He no longer indulged in violence and killing, and even detested bloody scenes. Instead, he began to develop a deep interest in art and music. It seemed that every beat of the new heart in his chest was changing his thoughts. However, even so, he did not refuse the new mission Peter assigned him. Returning home, Bang silently looked at the scar on his chest, then quietly paid all of Mary's medical expenses. In the following days, he lay in bed like a lost soul, completely cutting off contact with the outside world. It wasn't until Peter issued an ultimatum that he decided to meet the other party once. But unexpectedly, Peter seemed to have already seen through the bewilderment and lostness in Bang's heart. When he learned that Bang no longer craved anything, he frankly stated that in this secular world full of fame and fortune, there was only one thing that could pull him out of those dark days: working wholeheartedly. Because work would force people to be active and not get stuck in one place forever. Next, Peter changed his tone, declaring that Bang had an innate talent to become a top assassin. Therefore, he absolutely must not waste this God-given gift. Otherwise, before long, he would become useless. This was clearly a stark warning. Peter needed Bang to quickly recover his state and continue selling his life to kill for him. Bang, of course, had no ability to resist, and in the end, could only obediently comply. Peter was extremely satisfied with this, but the changes in Bang became increasingly apparent. Previously, he was always indifferent to colleagues, not even bothering to look at them. Yet now, he actively asked if they needed help. Not only that, Bang also spent all his savings to buy a long-abandoned hotel. Although the place, having been neglected for a long time, exuded a dilapidated and desolate appearance everywhere, Bang was very satisfied and planned to transform it into a hospice. Before long, April intentionally took time off to visit Bang and show her concern. However, Bang's attitude was completely different from usual. He directly refused and closed the door on her. April stamped her foot, thinking that Bang's mind must have been troubled. But what she didn't know was that ever since he was discharged from the hospital, Bang had often secretly visited Mary, quietly observing the lives of the mother and child from the shadows. A never-before-felt kind of emotion began to grow in his heart. Finally, one day, Bang began to be dissatisfied with the status quo. So he deliberately created a chance encounter at the supermarket and indeed attracted Mary's attention. The other party even actively invited him to walk in the park. Bang introduced himself as William, an ordinary antique dealer. However, Mary intuitively felt that his identity was not simple. But whenever she thought of her late husband's heart, she had an inexplicable fondness for Bang. She told him that no matter what he intended to do, please take good care of himself. Bang was moved by those affectionate eyes, and without thinking, immediately agreed. However, reality is always incredibly harsh. In the following days, Bang continuously carried out the work at hand, eliminating quite a few enemies for Peter. The old boss was appeased and very happy, thinking that Bang had finally come to his senses and completely abandoned the idea of retiring. But Johnny still felt that Bang's condition had been increasingly unstable lately. However, before he could come up with a countermeasure, trouble found him. That day, Johnny drove to his girlfriend's apartment building, only to unexpectedly discover a man in a bloodstained shirt secretly running out of the complex. Seeing this, Johnny's heart immediately filled with a premonition of ill omen, thinking his girlfriend had met with an accident. So he rushed into the apartment to check the situation, only to find his girlfriend showering in the bathroom. But Johnny wasn't happy at all, because normally at this time, his girlfriend would still be at the gym. Even if she showered, she would do it there. Thinking of this, Johnny became even more suspicious that his girlfriend and that man had cuckolded him. So in a fit of rage, he decisively killed his girlfriend, and then wanted to find that man to settle the score. But Peter stopped him, because, according to Peter, no matter how useless Johnny was, he was still his biological son, so he couldn't let his hands be stained with blood. As for killing, he just left it to Bang because he had never failed. Bang didn't hesitate for too long. Upon receiving the order, he acted quickly. That very night, he eliminated that man. The next day, he acted as if nothing had happened and went on a date with Mary. The two talked about everyday things. The conversation gradually expanded to views on art and music. Mary was clearly very interested too. They both chatted animatedly and agreed to have dinner together. And towards Mary's son, Sam, Bang was especially gentle and patient, even actively taking on the role of a father. However, this warm and harmonious scene was unintentionally witnessed by April from afar. So she hastily took out her phone to take pictures, preparing to find someone to investigate the identity of this mother and child. However, before that, she still wanted to talk to Bang once. But unexpectedly, he was so cold and heartless, directly demanding to cut off their relationship. How could April swallow this anger? So she decisively took the photos and went to find Johnny. Both of them hated Bang to the bone. Therefore, they quickly cooperated perfectly, preparing to jointly eliminate this thorn in their side. Then April told Johnny that Bang had been frequently going in and out of a hotel lately. She asserted that the place surely hid some secret. Johnny was immediately aroused by that statement. So that very night, he snuck to that hotel to investigate everything. But as soon as he stepped inside the hotel, he was so astonished he couldn't utter a word. A lively party was being held there. But weren't the people clinking glasses and dancing supposed to have been assassinated by Bang already? Johnny was immediately furious and scared, hastily pulling out his phone to take pictures. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Tony discovered that he was secretly lurking. Johnny was so frightened that his soul flew away. Without a word, he bolted outside. Seeing this, Tony immediately chased after him relentlessly, but in the end, he was still one step too late, only able to watch Johnny drive away. Realizing that the hospice had been exposed, he hastily contacted Bang to recount the entire incident. Elsewhere, Johnny, having miraculously escaped death, found his father. He showed the photos on his phone, declaring that Bang had faked all the assassination missions. His tone was full of worry and anger. Looking at the photos on the phone, Peter suddenly trembled, his eyes wide. He only then belatedly realized that Bang had betrayed him long ago. The targets he personally assigned, Bang hadn't killed a single one. Instead, he had taken photos proving their death to deceive him, then brought all those people to hide at the hospice. Peter immediately turned purple with rage at the humiliation. Just thinking about being deceived and led in circles by Bang like an idiot, he only wanted to find him immediately and eliminate him. But on second thought, Peter proactively changed his mind. Because Bang had previously offended quite a few people, if he revealed those murder cases, the major forces of both the dark and light factions would together want Bang's life. He fundamentally didn't need to act himself. However, unlike his father's calmness, Johnny, who was already jealous of Bang's assassin talent, now had old hatred mixed with new. Therefore, at this moment, he had only one single idea. He must personally kill Bang. At the same time, Bang managed to meet Tony. Compared to the startled and anxious expression of the other party, Bang maintained a calm demeanor. Because from the moment he decided to betray the organization, he had prepared himself mentally for being discovered and already had countermeasures ready. Afterward, he hastily left the hospice, using the cover of night to go to Mary's house. He urged her to take her child and flee. However, seeing Bang's urgency, Mary hesitated. Then she probed, asking Bang if he remembered what he had promised her that night in the park. But Bang did not answer the question directly, only looked deeply at Mary once before turning and walking away without looking back. However, before he could definitively deal with Peter, another wave of unidentified assassins, fully armed, crept into Bang's residence. Clearly, these were the other forces Peter had mentioned. Fortunately, Bang was always vigilant. As soon as he noticed unusual movements outside the door, he quickly prepared for a counterattack. So when the group of assassins was about to search room by room, a tear gas grenade suddenly exploded. The pungent smoke immediately spread, blinding the assassins, and then, using the cover of the smoke, Bang decisively and neatly dealt with these uninvited guests. But in his heart, he also knew that the danger had not yet been resolved. To survive, he had to actively control the situation. So the next second, he put on a bulletproof vest, grabbed a suitcase full of weapons, and went straight to the hospital, then directly to the helipad on the rooftop, stole a helicopter, and quickly flew back to the hospice. Almost simultaneously, Johnny also led a large group of men, preparing to go to the hospice to eliminate everyone. Fortunately, Tony reacted quickly. After receiving Bang's call, he quickly returned to the hospice, loudly urging everyone to evacuate quickly. Thus, when Johnny led his men to storm the hospice, inside the building, besides Bang and those who stayed behind to guard, all other survivors had been moved out. And to round up Johnny and his accomplices in one net, Bang had long set up a perfect trap. In just a few short minutes, Johnny's faction suffered heavy casualties. Realizing his carelessness, he immediately video called his father, preparing to focus his mind for a counterattack. At the same time, Peter also sent people to infiltrate the hospice's surveillance system, continuously providing remote support to Johnny. But unexpectedly, Bang and his teammates' defense line was incredibly strong. However, at this very moment, another wave of people rushed in. Their goal was also to take Bang's life. The situation of those at the hospice became increasingly difficult. Tony, who was originally sniping from a high position, was also forced to descend to the main battlefield to provide support. Seeing the enemy's firepower becoming increasingly intense, Bang decided to take the offensive. So, taking advantage of the fierce stage of the battle, he immediately retreated when the enemy was not paying attention, hiding behind the chaotic crowd to ambush, successively eliminating the stragglers. Next, he deliberately revealed a weakness, luring a small group of pursuers into a preset trap. Following that, a violent explosion echoed, and the battlefield lost another point of firepower. Clearly, the development of the situation was step by step under Bang's control. And at this moment, Peter was watching the scene on the surveillance screen, burning with rage. He hastily picked up the phone and called Johnny, ordering him in a ruthless tone that he must kill Bang. Otherwise, Johnny shouldn't bother coming back. On another front, someone had attacked inside the hospice. Unexpectedly, the people Bang had saved all possessed considerable fighting abilities. Bang, meanwhile, became even more ghost-like, appearing and disappearing like a phantom floating on the battlefield. Each time he appeared, he could precisely harvest an opponent's life. Under everyone's coordinated efforts, they successfully repelled the first wave of attacks. However, just as Bang and his teammates were checking if the elderly and women were injured, Johnny suddenly burst in, pointing a gun, and shot dead a man in the hospice. He was about to continue shooting when he was hit by multiple bullets and fell to the ground. It turned out that Bang had already circled behind Johnny, subtly turning the tide. Johnny clutched his wound, continuously begging for his life, but Bang coldly uttered a single sentence: "Say goodbye to your father." And this scene was fully witnessed by Peter. It turned out that Bang's gun barrel was equipped with a communication device, live-streaming this gift to him. Johnny's death completely ignited Peter's fury. He immediately called Bang, his voice filled with pain and cruelty, declaring that things had come to this. The last bit of affection between them had vanished into thin air. Then he changed his tone, announcing that he had captured Mary and the baby and wanted them buried with Johnny. Hearing this, Bang immediately panicked. He hastily led his men straight to Peter's headquarters. On the other hand, after hanging up the phone, Peter ordered his men to stuff Mary into the trunk of a car, preparing to take her to a dump for disposal. As for Mary's baby, it was handed over to April. Quickly, the final decisive battle began. Bang was familiar with the organization's terrain, and using his knowledge of the area, he quickly led his men to sneak into the inner courtyard. After swiftly dealing with the guards outside, Bang and Tony quickly proceeded into the main building, carefully searching upstairs. However, Bang's speed of advance was too fast, causing Tony behind him to be unable to keep up and be blocked by a muscular guard. Fortunately, Tony had solid combat skills, fighting back and forth with his opponent, even gaining the upper hand. Finally, he seized the opportunity to use all his strength to throw the opponent tumbling down from upstairs. At this moment, Bang had followed the sound of the child's crying, successfully finding Mary's son. Seeing the baby safe and sound, the heavy stone in his heart finally fell. But before he could breathe a sigh of relief, April suddenly attacked him from behind. However, how could she be Bang's opponent? With just one move, she was pinned to the ground by him. It was at this moment that she truly felt fear, crying and begging Bang to remember their old relationship and spare her. What was even more unexpected was that Bang actually softened. This scene was fully witnessed by Peter. He found it both ridiculous and absurd. He roared, swinging an axe, and rushed towards Bang. But the bullet had pierced his body a step earlier. Peter fell stiffly to the ground, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. He had not expected that Bang would actually dare to lay a hand on him. Who knew that at this moment, Bang's heart was also filled with complex emotions, the past grievances, and the pain the other party had caused him. All vanished in this instant. On the other hand, Mary was also rescued by the hospice team. Her heart was filled with longing for her child, so before she could even say thank you, everyone rushed straight towards the villa gate. The result was that after just a few steps, she saw Bang carrying the baby out the door. Seeing this, Mary immediately rushed to hug her unharmed child. Her eyes were filled with gratitude for Bang. At this point, this crisis finally came to an end, and the once arrogant and unruly assassin organization completely disbanded in this decisive battle. Bang and the people he saved finally had the opportunity to move forward and start a new life. Time flew by, and 3 years later, Bang had settled with Mary and her son by the sea, living together as a true family. Although their life was simple and ordinary, it was the happiness they had always longed for. The film ends here. Thank you for watching the film. What do you think of this film? Please comment below.